of the United States of America, and to the
to
republic
the republic for which it stands,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we are going to review and discuss the strategic plan, which was attached to your board packet.
So, Madam Chair, if I could start. So we did the 2 days of planning with Hugh Life, and we came up with a list of items that were identified as goals or priorities. And folks volunteered to be lead on those to start to make some headway on defining what it was, who might be on the team, if there were other resource needs that needed to be identified. And today is our first attempt to come back and have that further conversation. And so I just want to maybe review the vision of the county that we confirmed when we were doing our strategic planning, and that's Pine County will be a place where people come to recreate, to work, and to start successful businesses, and a place whose identity remains rooted in the outdoors. And so that drove a lot of the discussion and thinking. And then the actual goals were divided into 3 focus areas, and they were developing community assets, expanding capacity, and positioning for success. And so in your packet, there was just a listing of those goals and the identification of who the lead or leads of that project would be. And so if it's agreeable to you, I thought we would just start working through that list, starting with, and I added numbers just for convenience so that we can keep projects straight, especially from year to year. And so if we start with project number 1, fund balance for each operating fund in Kelly.
Yes. So what do you want me to cover?
What does that goal entail?
Yeah,
Who's involved in that goal? What's a timeline for that goal?
sounds good.
Did JJ go off, Ryan?
His video is muted, but he is still there.
Okay.
Okay. So that goal, the board has been very focused on the general fund balance, and through the years, there's been some focus on the HHS fund balance as well. However, some of our other funds haven't been as much of a focus. So the highway department, for example, and then we probably want to wrap in some of those other funds like our building fund and our technology fund as well. So I think the players we're probably going to end up working with is going to be that investment/financial committee. And just to kind of start to establish what do we need the fund balance in those to be. So the highway department maybe is a different beast than like the building fund and the technology fund. But it's just something that we really should focus on, because right now, with how we've done our highway funding, really the highway department is hurting for funding. And that's just because we haven't had a focus there, and Mark's just taken 0% levies and used fund balance, and now we're to a point where that doesn't work. So the hope is that we can establish whether a percentage or a minimum dollar amount and work towards that.
Madam Chair, so can we have a discussion here? So, help me, we have a general fund we're shooting to carry 25% of our overall budget. So when we do that, is that to be used in all of the other spots? You know what I mean? So if we expand that, are you trying to figure out how much goes to each one, or how?
Right.
So
So
are we
like,
gonna have separate ones plus maintain that one at that percentage?
I believe the goal was to have separate ones, because for example, in the last couple months, if you looked at that cash balance report, the highway department's in the hole. So that means the general fund is borrowing the highway fund money until they get more of their revenues in.
I get it.
So at least by having that general fund balance, we can do that. I mean, it's not like the board's making a fund balance transfer or anything, but we
Right.
have the money in the bank to be able to cover those expenses.
So what I'm wondering there is, do we change a model for our general fund now if we start having bigger balances saved somewhere else, or we just want all of it to grow? That's what I'm wondering.
I would feel like we'd want all of it to grow. When the state auditors look at it, they look at each fund separately. And
And I would ask the question, when the board established the goal for the general fund, what were your assumptions going into that? Because I don't recall that the goal was to cash flow the other funds.
No, see, that's just
Yeah.
in my mind.
Yep.
The county has X amount and then whatever the county needs below it. That's the way, so that's why I'm asking for that clarity. That's kind of for me, because in my mind, it was that way. So, that doesn't mean it's right. You know, 'cause
And then, Madam Chair, I think the other thing that happened since we set that goal is the way we were required to count highway funds changed. Because I believe we used to be able, we would get advances. If we knew a project was gonna go in 2024, we would have already had the money in our checkbook.
Yeah.
And then they switched that, correct me if I'm wrong, so that it was more, you took a draw on it and some of it became reimbursable almost. So it was a huge shift where if you were gonna do $9 million worth of work in this construction season, we would have had that money in the bank already. And now to not have that, it changes not the work that needs to be done and not the ability for us to pay the contractors when they're done. It changes how it looks on paper.
yeah, and
Madam Chair?
Yep, go ahead, JJ.
Yeah, maybe David would be better for this. Has Mark given any indicators yet of what the total savings this year the highway department has experienced with the lack of snow and lack of road treatment and due to the very, very mild winter? I got to think that that's a substantial savings that should be factored into this also, correct? Has he given any indicators of what this record warm, mild winter is saved?
Yeah, I would, like you, anticipate that there are some savings this year from not having to sand and salt and plow as much. We always have to remember we do an annual budget, so we have the first half of next winter before we can declare victory. And then this will be an item that will get reported in the quarterly budget update after the end of the first quarter. And so you'll get some more detail on that.
Yeah, we have to remember last year was terrible and last year didn't end until January 1st of this year.
And the piece, just to maybe draw the distinction, the piece that drives the fund balance in highway is primarily the projects, which are not levy funded significantly. Those are state aid dollars and
Right.
tax dollars. And so it all gets lumped together in the fund, but the operating budget is pretty small compared to the project budget and really doesn't drive the fund balance piece of it much.
And
I
the
think we'll
percentage
have
for
to,
sales tax looks good yet? Still on track for where we thought?
JJ, you want to go back and start that again? You guys were talking over each other.
Oh, I'm sorry. So does the tax portion, sales tax portion of this, are we still on track with that? Are those numbers still are where we expected, or they worse, they better?
Isn't that just in the Friday update?
yeah,
So as of 2020, the collections for 2023 were 4.6%. I think it was above 2022. And the sales tax is a flat total amount of money. Once that amount of money is collected, the sales tax ends, or once we get to the date, the sales tax ends. And so the balancing act with the sales tax really focuses on, did the project estimate that was done several years ago match what the project's actually going to cost?
Gotcha. Thank you.
But yeah, collections, I don't know if I shared this in the Friday update or if I just
Yes.
did it back.
Yes, you did. Yep.
But if you look at the number of years into it versus the percent collected, we're running ahead of what a straight line collection would be.
Yeah, thank you.
Steve, what were you gonna say earlier?
Well, I think within those numbers, there's some interesting conclusions we could probably draw is that the economy in Pine County is doing pretty good. Because when we started 10 years ago, 12 years, whatever it was, when we started, the estimate was that we would collect about 700,000 or 800,000. And then we went over 1 million, and this last year we collected 1.8 million. I know there's inflation that has taken place, but there's a lot of economy going on in our county if we collected 1.8 million at 0.5%.
Yep, I agree.
A lot of Amazon.
Could be.
The February forecast is due out tomorrow, the state February forecast. They will look at their sales tax collections versus their projection. And that will be a number that's kind of interesting and probably follows what we're seeing statewide. But that will give a macro perspective on the sales tax.
Say, Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
could this be something possibly for Leslie Economic Development? Is there a way to, for marketing purposes and for tracking and to get the best bang for our buck? Is there a way to kind of line item where these the sales tax dollars actually come from? Is it coming from local sales, internet sales? Could it even be broken down further? Lodging, fuel. I mean, to kind of track the customer. We got the money's coming in, but wouldn't it be kind of nice to know where it's coming in from?
It'd be very nice to.
I agree, JJ. So we have
Yeah, how
asked
could,
that information from the Department of Revenue and they will not release it because it's private data. Because then we could start to calculate, oh, this is how much Walmart makes and things like that. So they will not release.
gotcha. Okay.
So maybe just looking at like the goal of this or the outcome of this goal would be currently the audit reports the fund balance of the general fund every year against the county board's goal. Kelly, would you see that if the board established goals for the other funds, that those could then be reported in that same format?
Yeah, I think that would be a really good way to do it.
So what do we have, Madam Chair?
Go ahead, you're fine.
So what do we have for separate funds right now? Besides building and tech? IT is there. Was there one
Yeah.
more?
So we have a lot of funds,
I
but
know
kind of.
they don't have, we're not doing anything.
Right, so you've got the building and the tech fund that, we fund with tax levy dollars every year. The one I didn't mention is the elections fund, because I think we're to a point where we have that levy down, and as long as we levy that amount each year, we can.
We have that one managed though.
Right, we have that managed, and other ways, we've got our debt funds, obviously, but those are set in the bond documents of how those levies are done. So really, it's just the ones that we haven't focused on are the highway and then potentially the tech and building fund.
And we talk about highway almost every budget. How they could just kind of scrape by,
And Madam Chair, Health and Human Services, right?
Right.
That's a large and active fund that I think this will be an interesting process to see how their fund balance, because we know like Highway Health and Human Services has worked to spend fund balance in recent years versus increasing levies.
We did that with Health and Human Services. Is that what you said? Oh, I thought highway. I didn't know that.
So if that sounds like a good outcome, that actually it could be for the 2024 audit, right?
Right.
That will be done next spring.
Yes.
So what are your suggestions then? Like, for management side?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
So like Dave pointed out, like with the highway department, for example, we need to focus on more of that operating cost probably. Than that project cost. And so that's something to think about. Same with Health and Human Services. You look at their total budget. That includes programs and things like that. So maybe we need to start looking at operating costs of those funds. And is it just setting a similar goal for those operating costs in other funds as we have for the general fund? It might be as simple as that. And then just being clear when we're doing our budget, that's what we are working towards.
Beneficial.
Madam Chair, are we ready to move to number 2?
I think we are.
Which we could have almost wrapped number 2 into number 1 as well. So currently, every year we are budgeting, we are levying dollars in the building fund, for example, and we have a facilities committee that oversees, everything facilities related. But we don't have literally like a written capital improvement plan or program. Something that says every single year, in 5 years from now, we know we need to replace this front end loader. So we need to plan for $10,000 a year or whatever. They're way more expensive than that. $50,000 a year to plan for that front end loader. And so that's just something that I think it's going to be a Mark and I working on it a lot of what are those things that are going to need to be replaced, both buildings and equipment, and when will they need to be replaced? And then we can be intentional about making sure we have the funds for them. Rather than getting to a point of, oh my gosh, we need a new roof and it's $500,000 and we don't have anything. We don't have any funds, so we're going to need to do something. Just to have literally a written document. I know Mark's got a lot of it in his head, but to have a written document for all of those things.
Madam Chair? So Kelly, would initiating that as part of the 2025 budget process so that this starting in August, September, is that reasonable? Or is that too optimistic or?
I would love to get it done by then. However, I'm not gonna have time. And now I just got another election this morning. So it's a time factor. And so like when we established the goal dates, I think I had put January 2025, just because that was because I think there's a lot of work that needs to happen too before we get to that budget discussion of what and quantify, what is it?
I'm just thinking that these typically when you do your capital budget, your total will be more than you can afford, right? And so maybe the policy question is it's easy to make the list of projects. It's hard to figure out how to make that fit in a responsible budget. So maybe that's the piece that takes longer is identifying the funding. So maybe there's a first cut that just tries to get a framework for projects and just acknowledge that we're not going to have it funded, right? And I'll just share a quick story. The first city I worked in, our engineer did a capital improvement plan for resurfacing roads. And in order to make it fit the budget we had, it was a 99-year replacement plan, right? So, but that was a starting point, right?
Plan.
Yeah. And so that might be the equivalent of, so if you're okay with that, don't assume that whatever is presented is a request for funding as much as trying to get a framework for discussion, and then there have to be priorities set. Is that fair?
Mhm.
You want me to take that one or do you want to take that one, Terry?
If you want to go first.
Okay, so, and this ties into what we started at the land committee last week is just literally identifying our memorial forest lands with signage. And so we are in the process of working on some ideas for signs and we'll be going back to the committee in April with more
Can
definite.
you get a little closer to the microphone, please?
Yeah, so this is something that we started
you.
last week at the land committee, and so it is literally getting signage at our memorial forest so that they're easier to identify and have information on how they can be used as well. So some ideas of signs were presented, and we are going back to kind of fine tune some ideas and come back to the committee in April.
Madam Chair, are you thinking just like entrances to them? Borders or?
Greg was thinking more like borders for them, which I think is a really good idea, so that we're respecting that private property too that we butt up against.
Mhm.
But to start with, it would be more like along the road and things, because we probably can't do them all at once.
Yeah, cause I'm looking at like some DNR stuff and it says no off-highway vehicle use or open to public hunting or whatever have you. I like that idea. I think that'd be good. And
Well, we had talked about generic signs to keep the cost down.
Yep.
Because we don't want to spend a lot of money, but then having, you can get the papers and get them laminated.
Yep.
And have that stating what you can or can't do.
well, most of the county land is all, there ain't a whole lot of restrictions on any, I mean, it's up to us, I'm guessing, but I would assume it's open to hunting, open to,
No permanent stands anymore, and
Yeah.
no cutting timber
Right.
over
Yeah.
or stuff more than 2.5 or 3 inches or something like that.
Yeah, we have an ordinance that defines what can and can't happen on those lands.
yeah, put a little,
QR code.
there you go,
Right.
just snap it. I mean, really, you could list everything and someone's gonna find some stupid little thing that is not legal on there. So, and then do it, but, so I would think the more basic, the better. And have some reference to check county policy for, I mean, that's up to them. And if they do something wrong, that's their problem,
Well, we had talked about too, having it on the website so that they can go to the website and see it, or what is that other one through the state? You use that one,
The
one. or-
Onyx.
the Onyx.
Or whatever.
Yeah,
and then
having the
watch it.
correct information on Onyx, just kind of looking at all those avenues is some of the stuff that we talked about too, to make sure that, and Onyx had bad information, so they were gonna get that corrected. Anyway, so.
Madam Chair,
Go
I
ahead.
guess I got a question for Commissioner Holland. Commissioner Holland, can you even hear any of this discussion?
Yeah, I can hear every word.
Okay, all right. I don't hear anything on this end. Very, I texted Ryan to just get the microphones a little closer.
No,
And then can
I'm
we
hearing-
just get a little history of this exactly, so the people watching and when they view this later, what exactly can you define is Memorial Forest, and so people understand it's tax forfeited land that was moved into Memorial Forest, correct?
Correct, by resolution of the county board.
Okay. And then Terry had mentioned, our chair, Commissioner Lundgren, had mentioned that there's been public interest. I guess I requested, what is the public interest? Is it groups? Is it people that can't find enough room in Nemadji or General Andrews or Banning State Forest or any of the other tens of thousands of acres of land that's available? Or are they too crowded out there? Is it too cramped? Why the need?
Why the need for what, JJ?
To
So what you
open
would
this up
ask,
and to post it and to promote it, and what's changed? You said there was public interest in this. I guess I'm just trying to make sure everybody understands. First of all, it's forfeited land. And what
Can I
what is the
Take a
need?
stab at that?
Yeah, please do.
go ahead, Steve.
Well, the most of the memorial forest land was tax forfeited, more than, some of it 100 years ago, some of it 70 years ago. It's long been, it's not something that happened in the last 5 or 10 years. And so it's become known to be public hunting land. It's been logged, it's been relogged. And so people like the Deer Hunters Association, the Rough Grouse Association, Turkey Federation, those kinds of groups are interested in public access to public land. And that's where I hear it from, are the people that are in those organizations. And I personally happen to know a lot of people that enjoy hunting on public land. I know a family group that has hunted on the county land that's up by Markville. What's that place called, Matt? It's the flowage there. Anyway,
Hay Creek flow.
Hay Creek flowage. Yep. And so, they've hunted there long enough to see it logged and relogged, and they pull their camper up there for deer season. And those are the kinds of things that we want to encourage people to do. It's not a new thing. It's just making sure people know that it's okay to do that because it is public land. And I think it's a great asset for our county to have the county land available.
Madam Chair.
Matt?
Yeah, so another reason, JJ, is because since I've been a commissioner, and I think it started before, our public county land used to be like 69,000 acres or something like, it was a bigger number. And we've sold off so much, now we're down to like 39. So we've reduced where people used to be able to hunt, which is, and I live in a big chunk of that out there, and I hunt and I grew up in that. And like Steve said, there's people that move in and camp all deer season. And that's just what happens. And they do all their shopping and stuff in the area now because it's easy. We have stores and stuff like that. So that's just part of it. Then there's the blueberry pickers and the grouse hunters and the hikers and all that. The snowmobile, the people have trails go through there. They hit some of the county land too and the state land. Anyway, that's part of it is because we've reduced so much acreage from what we used to have. So it's nice to market because what people used to hunt is now private. And I can remember a couple times we tried to sell Memorial Forest, and right here in this boardroom, we had a large group of people, and we did not end up selling that chunk of Crooked Lake because there was so much public hunting on it.
JJ, we also had a township, Wilma Township, that came to our board and asked us not to sell any forfeited land, especially in their township, because they wanted to make sure that we had land. And you weren't at that meeting. So I wish you would have been, because it would have been a good conversation for you to have with them at that time. So we do have a lot of public interest out there to utilize this land, and we've had the land. And so it's best that we get it out there so that people know what we have and where we have it and what they can do on it so that it does get used.
Yeah, would this be more of a, I like the idea of townships having say, because the townships, they benefit most from their tax dollars off of land, correct? School districts, what's their take on it? I mean, anytime you permanently take something off a tax roll, it just increases the property tax on the remaining people that have to pay it. So what are all the rest of the townships thinking? School boards depend on a lot of the property tax, correct? What are their thoughts?
They also get a cut of any of the timber sales, I believe.
Yes. And they get pilled.
And they get pill payments.
And this one, for example, Madam Chair, who do you have for team leaders on here? You have Greg and Matt, and who is it again on here?
Kelly and
I didn't get a pack.
I think it's the whole land committee that's on this one.
Oh, okay. See, commissioners are involved in some of these project leads. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Matt and I are on that
Okay.
one.
Oh, was there any room at all for a commissioner from the 4th district, myself, to be involved with any of these? Any of them?
You weren't in attendance.
Which I tried to attend, and I was set up for a Zoom meeting, and then it was determined that because of the public off-site meeting, open meeting law,
Well, and when we
that I couldn't.
said that you were going to be here, so I think that's part of the issue is that you did not say that you couldn't attend that meeting, and it was set up when you were here in attendance. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
I'll track it. I'm sure I can still attend.
No, because then we'll have a quorum.
Well, we just have to post for a quorum, correct?
That's
Following
not the way we
Minnesota
do
statute.
committee meetings.
If you,
Well,
I would defer and we can request an opinion from the county attorney, but if you're gonna have a quorum of commissioners at a meeting of a county topic of interest where you're making recommendations to the county board, you have a de facto county board meeting because you have a quorum of commissioners,
You can't.
which is different than a quorum notice for attending a different meeting. For example, if there's a high interest in a zoning board issue and three commissioners want to attend that, we would post it as a quorum notice with the understanding that commissioners are not participating in the conversation as a board and they're not making a decision that's going to be their recommendation, their decision or a recommendation of the county board. But we can get clarity.
so it looks like this is the only one that has two commissioners on it? I don't see any
No.
others that have two commissioners, or where am I missing something
The-
here?
The HRA.
The one we
HRA.
just talked about, the investment committee has two commissioners on that.
Okay, I guess to follow open meeting law, and I guess to cover my rear end, I guess I would like to say that it's been missed since we started this year. The actual address of my location is 904 Cruz Rojas Street, Barrio Obrero, Puerto Rico, which is open for access to me, to view me, and open to the public. That's been missed also, Madam Chair, since beginning of the year.
What are you saying has been missed? I'm looking at your thing right now.
Well, to follow the statute, we got to give the address and location of where anybody is remote. So I just wanted to
Was your
state
address
that.
correct?
Correct.
Okay, so what needs to be corrected on your address?
Nothing. It just wasn't stated at any of these meetings so far in 2024.
It's on notice of participation via interactive technology at the beginning of every agenda.
Okay, just historically, Commissioner, the Chair Holland has always stated at the beginning of the meetings. I just didn't know if something had changed where you don't have to state the address anymore, just looking at the statute.
I don't have the statute in front of me, but I think the statute requires that the location be noticed in accordance with the meeting notice requirements, and that the reason for the remote attendance be included in the minutes. And so if we are not following what you think is the statute, we can certainly, review the procedure and make sure we do, but
Yeah, I just wanted to give my address, my location is all, just to clarify. You can look
Well, if
into it later.
I don't think anybody made up that address.
You're not getting my point. Have always said the address of where we were at. We talked about the open meeting law. And I couldn't attend this one. When I was on for Zoom, I just wanted to clarify my exact location of where I'm at right now to follow the statute. That's all I'm saying.
and
I
the
guess.
agenda has the correct address. Is that correct?
Yes, yep. Address has always been the same. It just hasn't been stated at the beginning of the meetings.
I'll check into the statute, JJ.
Yeah.
Back to business.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions on identifying sign placement areas? What are number 4?
Oh, that really kind of wraps in to number 3 as well. And so it is, it's not only that signage, but understanding what we have for potential public use. And so whether that is being clear, like a certain property has this type of use and promote that. And also look at parking areas to make sure. A lot of ours do have parking areas, but some of them are in very poor condition or are not large enough, and then people end up parking out on the road. So it's really just coming up with a plan of what those memorial forests are going to be or what they currently actually are.
Madam Chair, is there any of our property that has different uses or, we have a land use policy or whatever, but it's the same on everything, right? Or not?
There is the one. That has one that's slightly different in our lone township. I can look it up really quick what that.
Isn't it different
is.
too if it's forfeited land versus if it's memorial forest land?
Well, our ordinance only covers the memorial forest land because we didn't want it to cover the forfeited land because that. I mean, that we were turning over within a year, and so it seems silly to put regulations on it when the previous owner could still be on it because we're working through an eviction process.
Kelly's looking
And-
it up, just so you guys know what's going on.
Yeah, and it's not that big a deal. I was just thinking, and you can even get back to me, but I was just curious because I think it's all the same, whatever, like I refer back to the DNR, like some of it, like I know the stuff over in my parents' land, says no ATV use permitted, but you can hunt it. Some of them you can have ATVs on it, some of them, and I think it's a difference between wildlife management versus.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you're right, Josh.
Wildlife management area, some refuges, they don't let things happen like that.
Yeah.
But that was like foot traffic, very picky. And I think all the refuges that used to be open for small game only are
Okay.
open for deer hunting too now, even the
Okay.
state ones. But if they're not, they're marked out in the synopsis.
And to
about it.
me, it would be, if I know I'm going on public property, it's up to me to figure out if I can drive an ATV or hunt or whatever.
Right.
Cause when the conservation officer comes up to you and taps you on the back and says, hey, can't be hunting here and here's the ticket, that's my fault.
Ignorance is not a defense.
Not at all.
But we're gonna do what we can to help people from
Right.
not.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I like to refer back to the land use policy. I mean, I've stood in my deer stand, looked in the state land and seen a permanent deer stand, and then the guy's mad when someone comes and, cuts it down, so, but. Thank you.
Go to number 5.
Did we talk about the trail?
So I think Terry's looking at this one. Which the
Oh.
numbers are slightly different.
What should I be looking at? Down here. Down here, okay, sorry. Yeah, do you have extras or is that yours? Okay.
Oh, now he's giving you one, you have one. Okay, so we've done 2024-3.
Okay. So so then segment of Munger Trail, which is Mark and Steve. Steve, do you have anything on that one?
No, it's we've attempted to make some contacts, but not really had success yet.
And I think Aaron in the highway department has been working on it as well because they are preparing to do that segment from the high school down to Rock Creek. And so
Right.
some of
We
that
know,
DNR
we
money.
know. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, so we need some of that DNR money. So Aaron's been working on that engagement as well, to make sure we get that funding that has been pledged to it.
Yeah, and we know that is gonna happen because we got federal money coming, we got DNR money coming. It's Mark is showing up to the right meetings, and I think we got $1.5 million coming from federal dollars on that. But we're also trying then to get somebody excited in the DNR about two things. One is, when I was at the Northeast Transportation meeting the other day, they're talking about reclaiming some of the trails on the North Shore. Well, if you've been on that trail from Hinckley North, it's rough. It's really bad. And so some of those people, we're gonna encourage the DNR to go back and start. They gotta have a plan to be resurfacing those things. And then, of course, to connect from Hinckley down to the connection in Chisago County.
And Madam Chair, just two small pieces. So up in Hinckley, we have been working with the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe and Corporate Ventures as they look to redevelop that area south of Toby's, that we're hoping that they can make provisions to get a trail through there so that it can get over the interstate onto the side where the Munger Trail currently terminates. And then in Pine City, there has been a group that is working with the city, the school district, and the ECRDC to apply for some, I think it's Safe Routes to Schools money to get the segment from the high school north through the manufactured home park completed. So there are some little efforts that are going on as well.
Madam Chair. So is the band agreeable to giving that like a easement or a right of way through there on the trail?
Yeah, they are aware and they think it makes sense. And we just have to stay in contact when it gets to the design phase of their proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, I'm gonna go on that one. They were talking about what they could put up for like signage and stuff to help promote who they are. So they were actually excited about the trail and trying to figure out how they could configure things on that trail to make it so that it'd be like a touristy, you could go through there and see who Mille Lacs Band is and what they've done and, you know, that type of stuff. So, there was actually excitement that went with that when we had that conversation.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Hmm. Are we on branding?
Well, since the branding implementation plan was presented to the board, we've been working internally to get all of the departments set up. And Jen kind of gave me an extensive list of all the work that she's been doing in the background. Like a style guide was created and I had used that to just help me kind of walk through adjusting some agendas and memos. And so that'll be going out to staff to use as they need to adjust things. Just kind of creating all the templates and the mock-ups. And I think once as a full organization, we are effectively using the new logo, then we can move on to the branding strategy and rolling that out to the community. Which also involves, I mean, it's further down the list about the digital part of it. That also, you know, involves getting it out on the website and redoing the website and things like that. So it's moving along. It's kind of a tedious little process of, oh, you pull up, like I found like a board agenda request. I was like, oh, yeah, I should adjust this before I send it out. So having that time to make those adjustments so that we can really start implementing it. So.
Madam Chair, what is the feedback so far? Does everybody seem to like it? Or?
I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that because Jen's the one that's really interacting with everybody, but she has not said anything bad.
Everybody likes it better than the old logo, so.
Have you? I was just curious because I've heard a few things and people are like, yeah, that's cool. They like it. Yeah.
We included it at the meeting with the schools, and there was positive feedback from the districts.
I'm excited to see more of it roll out.
Yeah.
See what it's gonna do.
The local construction trade says it looks just like a 3M earplug. Have you got that comment yet?
No.
You see those? They go in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it. I don't see that.
If you take the tree and put it sideways and stick it in your ear, it's in your.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, same, identical, almost to scale as a 3M brand earplug. Matt probably knows from target range shooting.
The local business support resources on websites.
Yeah, so that's in my bucket of stuff to do. So kind of my thoughts on it is the resources available to businesses change fairly rapidly depending on what state and federal resources are out there. And it really is heavily dependent on the type of business, what their needs are and what their current position is. So you almost need to triage businesses before you can direct them to where they need to go if you have a situation. But In my brain, I would like to get something out there that is more of like a step-by-step process, like, did you get your zoning approval? And here's who you contact to do that when you're looking at starting up a business. And having some of those checklists, like if you're thinking of starting a business, here's some things to consider and some tools and resources to get you along your way. But if you can't do it all on your own, here's some resources of people that you can contact that can review your business plan, review your financial projections, and just kind of maybe just spitball ideas back and forth about what you're looking at. And then giving just some tips and tricks that once you are established, have you thought about being a chamber member? Have you thought about joining these professional groups? And then just sharing some ongoing resources that are free and already exist through SCORE and the SBDC, and even some of our regional partners like the Entrepreneur Fund. So that is what I'm envisioning being on our website, although it is kind of like a regurgitation of a lot of other things that are out there. It's not going to be super unique or fresh. It's just kind of what's up here. When I meet with somebody, we'll be on a web page. So
I'm thinking of, a lot of the phone calls that I would get was, I'm gonna open a food truck. Where do I come to get my license from Pine County? And it's like,
Yep.
well, you don't get one from, so having stuff like those resources in there too
Yep.
would be awesome.
yeah,
And then, on that one, we were at Snake River Watershed yesterday and they are looking for a coordinator. I want to say that's what the position is. And, they were asking if we could put that on our websites, on each county website, because they're not getting the applicants that they thought that they would get. Is that something that would be involved with this tour, something that we can do?
Yeah, it probably isn't, Madam Chair, involved in this effort. We can just work with HR and see. I know we have cross-posted some University of Minnesota Extension positions.
Okay,
And so we could
Yep.
probably
okay,
do that. And
perfect, thank you. Any other questions? Moving on to mechanism for matching business needs and resources.
all right. And that kind of ties into the first one. In a perfect world, you'd be able to kind of fill out a form that tells us about what your needs are, and we could match you up through a database to those resources. Right now, that database is like my brain, my colleagues' brains, people that I work with, like, oh, what's your situation? And this one I think is going to take a little bit more time to figure out. Just as an example, I had met with a business owner last week who I was referred to by a local resident, like, oh, you're in a unique situation. You should talk to Leslie. So I text the business owner. He sends me a very long, complicated text message. And I was like, we are going to have to meet in person. So I set up a meeting one-on-one to have a brief discussion and take down some notes and some things, just to kind of figure out how to resolve his situation. And I don't know if there's any database out there or trick to do besides the one-on-one. So I think part of this is just establishing a network within our community of, when businesses are having an issue, a situation, who can they call to discuss it with, and then figure out what resources are more appropriate. Well, this is going to take a little bit more time to map out because, kind of like you reference, like Mark has things up in his brain, I have things up in my brain. And when you start putting it down, it's like, well, if this happens, then this could happen. But if this is happening too, then this wouldn't be where we would go. And so becomes a very complicated little flow chart. And in that interaction with that business owner, even like a couple of days later, I was like, aha, I thought of something else. You should try this and call this person or consider this solution for your issue rather than just setting down one pathway. So it's a work in progress. That one's going to take a bit of time though.
Thanks for the effort that you put into serving our businesses and our peoples.
I enjoy projects and helping people. So those are the problems that I enjoy meeting with people on and helping them figure out a solution. So. Yeah.
Expand Leadership Academy. Jackie.
If we want to go in, do you want me to do that one or?
Oh, I'm sorry, Committee to Expand Staff Recognition. I'm
I'm
sorry.
flexible.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Dave gave me the right sheet of paper and I'm still up.
that's okay. I'll go from the top then. Committee to Expand Staff Recognition. So a common theme of the 2023 employee survey was more staff recognition. So our goal around this item is to show our appreciation, show more appreciation for the hard work that our employees do. We want to recognize, motivate, boost morale, and retain our talent. So we will engage a committee to help expand the recognition program. The committee will define objectives, determine recognition criteria, will choose recognition methods, and design a program that recognizes and is accessible to all employees across the county, no matter what their position is. And we will look to the Personnel Committee for involvement and guidance. We would be able to present, or we would present our ideas to the committee and expand the policy. Any questions, comments? Thank you. Okay, expand the Leadership Academy. So we have had approximately 10 employees complete the 12-week NACO leadership program, and the feedback has been very positive. I know we have at least 3 people in this room who have gone through the successfully gone through the academy. So the thought behind this item is, how can we continue this momentum? How can we continue to engage and support the employees that have already been through the academy? And then how do we bring more people in? How do we encourage and identify more people to attend the academy? Just some initial thoughts are developing a group for the people that have completed the training. And maybe this group would have speakers come in and talk about different topics, or maybe we'd create a formal graduation program. When you've graduated from the committee, maybe there would be a board recognition, but we'll just look for ways to expand the academy and, as I said before, support the people that have been through it and encourage more leaders to experience the program.
There is a second academy out there
Yes.
that I liked way better than the first one.
What was the name of that one
I
again,
don't
Terry?
remember. I'll look and I'll. give
Okay,
it to
that's
you.
fine. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's been a bit, but and it's through NACO. It's just, and they're trying to get it set up so that you don't have to do the first leadership to do the second leadership training now. Because they're different for different people.
And what was the focus of the one that you liked better?
This one is being a leader. So it's not necessarily being like a supervisor leader. It's just being a leader altogether.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you for that. Implementing digital branding.
All right, thank you. We have discussed, as Leslie said, the branding already, but this is just the digital side. So Jen and I have kind of taken this one up, and basically we're just gonna update the new county branded logos and color schemes on all our public facing social media and websites, and including all of our updated public facing forms or any type of presentation materials from the old logo. So that's kind of the goal, and it's gonna take IT and HR, because Jan is kind of doing all the department stuff. And then IT is just kind of working through everything. Like, I updated all the YouTube stuff during our last board meeting, because I think when you run across the old logo, you just kind of start, doing that kind of stuff. So, and then all of our website users with all of their forms and everything else. And then we have Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram as our social medias. So hopefully, once we get through some of this, we should be able to have our logo mainly done here by the end of the year. So.
Thank you. Virtual store for Pine County brand.
Virtual store. So Jen will be the project lead on this as it's right in her wheelhouse. So the thought behind this is to develop a virtual store for sure for employees and for others possibly, where we would have Pine County branded merchandise such as wearables, tote bags, coffee mugs, whatever we determine. We would showcase, of course, our new logo. And we've even tossed around the idea, would we have merchandise available in the public? Would we have it in perhaps at could be in a cafe? Would we have it in Toby's and Hinckley? Something wearables or the merchandise branded with our logo. Maybe someone's been in the county over the weekend and stops in somewhere and sees a cool item that maybe they'd like to have. And for sure, our employees. Josh has had a conversation with a local business that has experience. Lee's Pro Shop has experience in creating virtual stores. So that was interesting to hear.
Yeah, and they do it with a lot of schools and stuff like that where, you know, they don't like to do just one-off things, but maybe if you had a couple times a year, every quarter, you get your order in by this time, then you would get it by this time type of deal. So.
And
but-
we'd be looking at something on demand too. Isn't something we'd carry huge inventories of merchandise, so.
So AMC has it where you can place your order a couple times a year and
Yep.
then you get your products from them. So it's maybe more than a couple times a year, but you go through AMC and then they place the order through their, like through Lee's Pro Shop. And then you would get the merchandise.
My HR group has that through AMC, and that's where I have gotten my last 2 computer bags. So, but it is kind of where you place your order, and you know, it was easy to do and easy to pay.
Yep. You develop unified communication plan.
So this one is not well defined. And currently, we have each department that has communication needs does their own communication. And those needs vary widely. We have ordinary, required notice publications. We have education and informational communication. We have crisis communication. And so my goal would be to identify each department's primary communicator and then start to get from them what their processes are, what their templates are, what works well for them, and then try to share that amongst all the communicators. And I'm timelining that would start the 4th quarter of this year and then finish up the 2nd quarter of 2025.
Inventory and timelines for online payments.
Yeah, so that's me. So we do currently accept some payments online for highway permits and for probation fees, however, and property tax. However, there are potentially other departments that could use an online payment platform, so just understanding those fees that people are collecting and how they'd actually like to collect them, and if there's a way that we can serve the public better with providing online options. And then just kind of moving towards more electronic type payment options as well. So some of our departments do accept credit cards, where others do not, and so potentially just working towards implementing that further.
Have you had departments reach out to you and say, hey, can I do this?
So that's the interesting part. I have departments that didn't even know it was an option.
Good.
And so in talking, so I think that's where the conversation starts, is what fees are you collecting and would you find benefit in doing it in a different way? And would it serve the public better?
Venmo. So do you get people that pay their taxes with credit card?
Right, we get people that pay their property taxes with credit card a lot over the phone, because we have a payment processing center and online.
Okay.
And they do pay a fee.
Yep, they have to pay the fee. The statute for property taxes literally says we cannot absorb the fee for those.
Well, and don't we get a fee for, like, if probation comes in or the recorder's office, don't they have to pay is it 3% or whatever?
They do not.
Oh, they don't?
Right. A couple of years ago in the budget process, that was a decision that was made, that those credit card machines at the counter, that's really just a cost of doing business.
Okay. Okay.
Madam Chair, I think that was a lot of me. I push that because I don't like the fees, so I'm just always like, I think they're petty.
I went to a Gophers hockey game the other day and
Mhm.
they don't take cash. And I looked at them like they were crazy. And then gave them your credit card and then they charge you the fee to use your credit card, but they won't take your cash. It's like, no.
Mhm.
Well, complete interactive online forms initiative.
All right, so during strategic planning, it was brought up by Kelly to have a better, more like PDF fillable forms on the website. So with our website redesign, we have added that into the build of the website. So once the website is live, we're able to build the forms as we see fit for each department. Since it was driven by Kelly, and hopefully the website will be live sometime in September as the kind of new estimate. Obviously with the election, we're gonna push that past the beginning of the year for Kelly, but we'll be able to build other department forms, kind of test it out and figure out how it works. And then we'll be able to get Kelly on board after the beginning of the year. So, but it should be helpful because then the form we get from the citizens will be like an actual filled out form. So it should be really helpful.
So they can do an online application for.
Yep.
anything?
Yep.
That's perfect.
Great.
But then we would get it and it would look exactly like they had just handed it to us instead of a bunch of random fields. So,
Oh, that's gonna be nice. Yeah, yes.
Kelly, you had enough, so you didn't get this one. So we have talked about GIS for a long time, I think, and the conclusion has always been we need more staff time or we need a staff person if we're gonna change the dynamic. Right now, the main users of GIS related stuff is the sheriff's office, highway, zoning, auditor, treasurer. And my goal would be to get them to coordinate some conversation among them. I know we contract with some vendors, we do some in-house stuff. And if we want to, I guess my goal would be to solicit feedback from those user departments, identify their highest priority unmet needs, and then see how we best work towards a solution.
Integration plan. Oh, I'm sorry, AI.
it's back to me. So we are working through the tech committee through an AI use policy. And so I think during strategic planning, we brought up having an integration plan. So I think we'll work through the committee as kind of a steering committee for that. But basically, how do our vendors anticipate using AI, or if we're gonna get billed extra for it? Kind of like, what would we use it for? So how would we integrate this into the county? Obviously, there's returns on investment. We don't want to buy things that we don't need. And I think initially, with AI, you run into that. Is it a solution looking for a problem? And it's the exact opposite of that, actually, because it's solutions to problems we didn't really know we ever had. So I think as it's kind of changing and kind of going through its kind of life cycle, we still don't know kind of everything that it can do so far. So through the tech committee, we'll kind of build this plan out. I know NACO is working through a bunch of AI policies, so we won't be starting from ground zero. But that's kind of the overall goal, is to kind of have that done this year or by the end of the year. So
With Central Minnesota Jobs and Training, they were talking about AI and they're gonna be having a class coming up on AI. I can get you the date if you wanna join in on that. But, and it's done through the schools, but I think it's gonna do more. But they were talking about grants and writing grants. And you can say, cover letter for blah, 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 and it'll write it. And if you don't like it, you push the button again and it doesn't. So, cause then the question was, how many people are gonna get the same cover letter? And they came back and said, really, nobody. So,
unless you use the same prompts, exactly.
yeah, maybe, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it was really interesting to hear what, and the one guy sat there and entered stuff while we were in the meeting and he would say, so, but I'll get you information on that, the dates on that.
What's the cost for AI? Is there a cost, a fee?
It depends. Like there's AI integrations we already have inside of our antivirus, our EDR solution. We're using it in the jail for the cameras so we can follow inmates around. So we already are using the machine learning side. Microsoft Windows is adding AI into it just kind of as their operating system. But I think it's going to be more of like our GIS vendor is going to come out and say, we have this new AI module. it's $25,000 a year and it can do X, Y, and Z. And then we're gonna have to figure out the return on investment for something like that. But we do that for every piece of software we do already. So I think it just depends whether it's gonna be part of the programs we already have or if we're gonna have to pay for it depending on, so.
Thing is, the licensure is probably gonna go up.
Well, it goes up anyway, so,
Yeah, it's just like another marketing, another tool.
correct, yep.
The first one. Evaluate the jail project. Facilities committee.
Yeah, that's me. That's not mine.
Oh, yeah. We're closer.
Well, I don't know what's happening. We've talked about it. We kinda, this is the way I look at it. Something had to be done in the jail as the way it was presented us through all of COVID and it makes sense with, not just because COVID, COVID brought out the weaknesses with separating of inmates. And we've always, the law around separating inmates has always been there. So there's a lot of things that happen in the jail because there's no mental health beds. So sometimes we hold them for a little while. And juvenile beds, the same thing. Sometimes we hold them for a little while, and they all have to be separated. Like, for example, if you have a juvenile in there, he cannot be where he can even hear or see an adult. So those kind of issues just exist. Rod or Jeff could probably explain them better than me. But so then you go to the part where we don't want to change the footprint. And we don't, and like I said, well, if we're gonna look at this and we have applied for the bonding and we have a kind of a plan that was, it's probably 2 years old now, isn't it? Roughly the estimate, so. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I brought up like, can we change the number of beds that we have as a whole? I don't know if that's good or bad, we'll leave that to them, but our population trends in jail, I think, are lower. So does that change what we do? I don't know the answer to that, but it could. And then the scanner thing makes sense to me, which is, it's just a body scanner. So when they come through it, it eliminates the physicians you might need to do body orifice checks. You know, they can always do a strip search, but there's places you can't see and things like that. So that makes sense to me. Separation makes sense to me. And then actually having a spot in intake so they don't really enter the jail, they're in intake. That means you kind of can separate your juveniles from the actual jail, but they're still in a holding spot. The same with mentally ill. So that all makes sense to me, and what it's gonna look like, I don't know. But I think Rod is great. He's got a lot of stuff going on, and Jeff and him in a loop. I don't know where we end up. We'll see what we get for money. So that's a moving target.
Well, we were told that there's really no money.
Yeah.
So we did ask, the ask was out there and we were told that, there's not money.
They spent it all last year.
They spent it all plus some last year. So JJ, you're on the facility committee. Did you want to add anything to that?
Just that it's difficult to hear when you don't speak into the microphones. But from what I gathered, that's what we reviewed at our facility committee, what we talked about, what Matt said is accurate from what I picked up.
Actually, he was speaking into his microphone pretty well.
Yeah, I was right into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I texted Ryan there. I got it turned up. And yeah, Steve said he can hear good, so I don't know. But from what I understand, yeah, Matt, sounds good. To work through it.
Do you have anything, Jeff, any thoughts on that one? Or do you want to?
I think we're on holding pattern till we get the official answer on the bonding and what that takes. And then I think it's worth reevaluating the money that we have set aside for it and what we can do with that. So that's been an ongoing conversation with Rod. And we'll see when the decisions are made, what that means.
Do we have like a time period? We need to do something sooner than later?
Well, there's a lot happening this summer
Okay.
because, we're gonna end up holding some inmates for Carlton County. So I don't know, we don't wanna be doing construction when that happens, I don't think. So I'm looking at, I'm guessing, I shouldn't say, I'm not in charge of anything, but I'm assuming it's gonna be after we're done help assisting Carlton County, which we agreed to do. And then, but it doesn't stop us from planning and doing that kind of stuff, figuring out what might work, and I think that's where I'd leave it. 'Cause it's a moving target.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, just, we're in a holding pattern until we get definitive decisions out of the legislature. So come May, we'll evaluate what those decisions were. Then if we were to decide that there is some construction necessary, that's probably at least a 6+ month process to go through the design process. So I would be surprised if anything we did was before 2025.
We might get money in 2025. Let's be,
Never know.
yeah, we can be hopeful. Expand social services, social work services to the inmates post jail.
Yes, so this is Sheriff Nelson and my lead project, I would say, our co-project that we're leading, trying to lead. Right now, we are providing some outreach services through a social worker from HHS to inmates. It's voluntary for the inmates. I think that we can, depending on, I think that's being used well and that's appreciated from what I've heard. And I think when we're looking at expanding those, it might not be HHS social work services. It might be coordinating with other agencies who provide some mental health services and other like services. And I think we put this on the timeline for later this year. So I think that will be a continual conversation to see what that looks like.
They had a program on this at the where Paul from St. Louis came down and they've got, so I mean, St. Louis has some really good programs going if you want other ideas too. They actually have a house in Ely that they put people in that just kind of need a place to be, you know, to heal or whatever. And they have transportation, but I mean, he was talking about a lot of the things that they're doing up there and they've got some amazing things that they're working on. So yeah, Paul McDonald, if you have any questions, reach out to him too. He likes to
Madam-
talk about it. Yes.
Madam Chair and Becky, I know you can give more detail than I'll give, but my recollection is that this program that you've been working on with the social worker in the jail is a county funded program. There's not program money attached to it.
Correct.
And so that has been the limiting factor with expanding programs is most of the stuff that Becky's staff does is covered by non-levy money. And so this is building a program that is primarily levy funded. And so that just is a good tidbit to have in mind when we think of expanding the program.
I think too, just to build on that, it is a couple hours a week that Adrienne is in the jail. But she does so many other things too. So it's really a capacity issue for her and for other staff. And then you have the funding issue. We have just begun billing MA for some services that we do post jail, or if there's been some intersection with law enforcement with adults. But I think if we're looking at having more of these services in jail, it will be bringing other providers in. And I think the tricky part will be finding the funding to do that. And if you find the funding, then hiring the staff to do that.
Okay. I know the plan is excellent. You know, you guys have just really done a lot of work on what you're going to do and how you can serve the people better. And hopefully it will keep our jails a little emptier, you know, if they can get the help that they need. Restorative Justice Crossover Youth Development Program. You're on your own, Reese bailed on you just for the.
Yeah, we've not, though. Thank you, Madam Chair. Reese and I have had multiple conversations about this. I did check with a colleague of mine who's on that Restorative Justice Committee with the state. It's really, they just have to get the Director of Restorative Practices in place before they can start distributing RFPs. And so that literally just went out the other day and it's gonna be posted for 3 weeks, and then hopefully we'll start seeing some money opportunities after that. So that's a full year later that it's still sitting there. It's a little frustrating, but the other one is the crossover youth development model. Becky and I met several months back on that, a preliminary meeting. That one's also kind of in a holding pattern. I did check with OJP about that recently. She didn't get back to me on that, but I have since heard the reason for their holding pattern is OJP literally do not have the staffing to administer all the grants that they're supposed to set up. So that's a problem. But I am in contact with Callie from OJP. She also is the one who oversees our evening reporting center grants. So so stay tuned. I think we put initially at our strategic planning meeting, maybe April or May as kind of a, start date on those, but we'll see whenever those RFPs come out, and then Reese and I will go from there. Thank you.
Thanks for what you do for that. Flexible funding for frontline law enforcement.
I'll start with that and then Jeff can fill in if needed. So at the last board meeting, we approved the accounting structure for this. And so that was step one. Step two through however many now will be to develop a policy as to how those funds can or should be used in kind of the process that the deputies can follow to use that funding. And then also just setting up like charge accounts so that the deputies don't have to pay out of their pocket and then get reimbursed from the county. So if we can get some charge accounts set up at places so that those can just be used. And then just funding it too. I know during the strategic planning, we had talked about potential donation type funding. So those are kind of the to-dos still. Jeff, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Not a whole lot. All the examples I've found are run under a nonprofit, so having it under a government entity, I am being a little held up on how we process that.
You take donations for your canine.
Yeah, we do, but I think the whole feedback has been, the government is somehow taking public funding and distributing it not as accountable as HHS is on how they do their program. So they wanted that clear separation between this is a nonprofit that's funding it and controlling the funds with a board, and it has nothing to do with Pine County government. So that's where I'm getting a little.
That's the system we used to have with.
Yeah, the organization information I've gotten is all that. It's not a, how do we do it within a government? And that would involve more conversation with, obviously with Kelly on what is okay and what isn't. And it starts getting a little more complicated when you have government rules rather than a nonprofit rules.
So what kind of places do they use for nonprofits? Just out of curiosity.
They created their own, the main one is out of, Wright County. They basically created a 501(c) or D or whatever letter goes after it, where it's all, they got grant money, they've got, income from a golf tournament and those kind of things that people donate to. And now they've actually have two parts of it. One that feeds into the deputies being able to do those immediate need things, but then they've also done a law enforcement benevolence fund or whatever you want to call it, where they put money back into training for deputies and buying equipment and those kind of things that we'd like to get started also as a 501. But so that's where I'm at with it. I'm struggling a little bit on how we process that. I don't have a lot of examples to work with.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
So I remember when the canine stuff started, that was 100% donation.
All right.
And then we started putting some money towards it. But I think when we talked about this, we were talking very minimal money it would take to float this. Like, is it just something we just need to, maybe us as a county should just commit What, cause I thought you threw out a number of like 1,000 or 2,000 bucks.
Right, I
Would go a
don't
long
think it's a
ways.
huge dollar amount that would be needed.
And then if someone wanted to donate, they can donate to the.
Right, right.
I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud, but.
Yeah, and Wright's obviously a bigger county to draw from, but they had, I think it's 2 years in operations now, and they've gotten like $100,000 worth of funding.
But they have fundraisers to get it, like.
Through the fundraisers, through the board of directors on that nonprofit. So again, not the same model that we're here, not the same expectations, obviously, on income. So again, that's where I'm stalled at, to be honest with you, is trying to figure out how we want to operate it. And I haven't had time to deal with it a whole lot, to be honest, as well. So,
What's the criteria that would make it happen?
well, I think that's part of what needs to be decided on. How we do that, because again, part of their model is every sergeant gets 10 gift cards for $25. They control the in and out with that. They give those out to deputies as needed. I don't know if that works in our model or not.
I mean, when you would give it to somebody, that's the criteria that's gonna matter.
Based all on what the deputies' decisions are. There's really no, with the nonprofit, there is
That's different.
looser guidelines and the ability to not, screw up somebody's accounting on what we did with quote government funds. So it's all outside that on a nonprofit basis.
Yeah, I wouldn't wanna levy money just to,
No,
I don't wanna do that.
no, that gets muddy.
Madam Chair, I'm just wondering if it's worth maybe broadening the focus a little and asking the question, is there the potential for a local nonprofit in Pine County to form or to step up and become a part of the conversation before we get too far down the road of, here's our policy?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Steve.
I would agree with David, and I think, a place for you, the Poma Shelter, our Redeemer Lutheran Church has similar type programs. Maybe we could draw them into the conversation. I'd be willing to facilitate that. And maybe they've already got a mechanism and the money could get to them and get gift cards back out to the deputies.
Yeah, and that'd be great. And I had that thought too. I just, again, haven't had time to chase down who those might be. So if everyone on this meeting has an idea, if they want to send me contacts, or Steve, if you want to do it, I would certainly appreciate
I
that as well. So
I can help with that, Jeff. I know some people that probably can help facilitate.
yeah, and if there's a way just to slide in under theirs and they set aside the funding within their organization, I think that'd be a wonderful thought.
So I have an idea, Jeff. Do you still have a chaplain group meeting
We
that
do.
would come out
Well,
to? And how many are involved in that? Because that would get the message back to all the churches. They used to meet kind of intermittently.
yeah, the chaplaincy is kind of, the main chaplain's moved on now, so I don't know that we have a good organization
Okay.
there right
It'd be kind of nice though, because I think a lot of people go to the churches looking for stuff, and so if the church, well, we help support this program and, that might be helpful for them too.
Yeah, and I think it's more even shorter term than that of a deputy's at a call and there's this
Yes.
situation.
Yes,
Right.
$100 could solve.
right. A hotel room for the night or.
20 bucks a lot of times.
a
So
bus ticket.
what they need.
Any other conversation on this one? Now we'll go to the Old Housing Forum.
All right, so that's me. So my thoughts on this, I've helped coordinate a housing forum in the region before. And so I kind of drew from that experience what one would look like here. And I think when we met, we wanted to hear from people in our community about what's preventing them from developing housing, whether it's single family, multifamily, what are the roadblocks and how can we help? So what I would envision is that we kind of pull together maybe an expert panel of people who have been successful in Pine County at developing housing and talk about what hoops they had to jump through, what connections they had to make in order to get the housing moving forward. I am considering revisiting our planning and zoning presentation that we did in conjunction with development to talk about how they relate to each other. And that depending on where you want to do development, the zoning requirements are most often the first impediment that developers reach. And that could be just getting an answer on whether or not they can do the project or not. This also ties in with GIS because quite simply, you know, zoning maps could be put in GIS and people could get that question answered for them pretty quickly if we could just, as a county, get all of our zoning on one map. So that's something else to just kind of flavor in there. And then, you know, in that same event, just showcasing what other funding sources there can be for housing and how that involves the local unit of government and the developer working together. And then maybe just having some breakout sessions where if you have a particular topic of interest under housing, if it's single family or multifamily or senior housing, or, you know, collaborating with local units of government, that you could break out and kind of meet those people where they're at. This will take quite a bit of coordinating and effort. And I know it was first talked about, oh, do it this spring. Well, already coordinating a familiarization event with real estate professionals regionally here in Pine County in April. So doing this at the same time seems a bit insurmountable, but I think, you know, just kind of putting it out there of what I have in mind and then kind of working through to see who I can get. Then we'll see where it goes in the next few months, and maybe this fall or into next year, we could have one. Just kind of getting those experts together and stuff would be, just require some coordination and planning and making sure that their schedules allow. So yeah, that's my thought process.
Thank you. Then we need to establish the 2024 COW meetings.
And Madam Chair, number 4 on the agenda outlines two that could be possible upcoming special meetings, committee of the whole, the annual road tour, and in checking with Mark, he's suggesting either April 23rd or 30th. And then Hugh Life is, they have a follow-up meeting with us as part of their contract. And so that could be scheduled in May or June if that were agreeable. And then obviously there's a myriad of other topics that you might be interested in putting on the list.
So we had talked about having more COW meetings when we were at strategic planning. How often do people want to do them? I guess that's probably the first question. Anybody have any ideas?
It seems like we can come up with plenty of topics every other month.
That's what I was thinking too, if we did every other month.
The 23rd or the 30th of April?
Right. That'd be,
Is that what we're looking for, a road tour?
yes.
That's fine with me. I don't know about everybody else.
Anybody have any issues with any of those dates? I'm open on both of them.
It's a Tuesday. Oh, they're Tuesdays.
They're
Yeah,
both Tuesdays, yeah.
both open.
23rd?
Let's go for the 23rd.
Would you want to do a motion to set that as a special meeting?
Yep, or do we want to set the one up for Hugh too?
Oh, you certainly you
Can I
can.
do them both at the
Yep.
same time? So Hugh, check in. I don't,
But I'd have to check their schedule.
oh,
So
okay.
if there are dates that in May or June that you know would work for the board, I'd want to verify those with them.
Right. I think, how are Tuesdays for people, for David to have those dates that they could give to Hugh?
Generally pretty good.
So like,
You guys
That's usually the day I kind of.
plan? So, okay, so if you figured May or June and just checked with them to see what they have open, so then do we have a motion to have a meeting on April 23rd? For the,
I'll make
move
that motion.
I'll second it.
okay, so we have a motion by JJ and a second by Steve. Are there any questions or anything?
And that would be a 9 o'clock convening right here
Nine,
and then
okay.
going on the road tour.
Okay, so 9 o'clock, April 23rd, meeting in Pine City. And do we need to do a roll call vote? Yes.
Yes, we need to do a roll call vote.
District 4, Commissioner Waldham.
Yes,
District 5, Matt Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Steve
Yep.
Holland.
Yep. Yes.
District 2, Josh Moore.
Yes.
And District 3, Terry.
Yes. Is there any other business that anybody wants to talk about while we're here? No. All right, so
Thank you, guys.
we will keep you posted on what's going to happen with Hugh when we know more. Have a wonderful
And
day.
Madam Chair, just one more comment. As far as like regular reporting of the strategic plan, unless you want something different, I would plan to touch base quarterly with the board, probably not reporting all items every quarter, but reporting some items that have made progress the previous quarter, if that sounds reasonable.
That'd be good. Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Meeting adjourned. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.